In today's episode, I explore my curiosity again with living abroad. This time, I got to unpack my curiosity with South Africa. I chatted with Kori Hale, a friend of everything we do here at Black Owned Productions. She is the CEO and founder of Culturebanx, an online magazine that covers the intersection of business, technology, and innovation for people of color. In 2024, she moved to South Africa for just 1 month. But in that short time, she learned about something called load shedding, which are widespread and frequent blackouts. What? She ended up moving back to the States because of this huge inconvenience. In addition to load shedding, we talked about culture, employment, and transportation. So let's get into my curiosity. What's up with living abroad in South Africa? Featuring Kori Hale. So we are here to talk about your time in South Africa, and I feel like there has been, even before this Trump election, a lot of Black Americans talking about a so-called exodus from the United States of America and moving to countries in Africa, and South Africa being one of them. So to open up the conversation, I want us to start off with a game, okay?
Ooh, I like this.
So it's called America or South Africa. And it's where I'm going to have you in rapid fire fashion choose whether you would want to receive a particular thing in America or South Africa. And we'll get the reason why after. Okay. You ready?
Yes.
So America or South Africa. First up, food.
I'm going to actually say America. Don't be mad, people. I'm going to say America.
Okay. Very curious to know why later. Okay. Healthcare.
South Africa.
Men.
Oh, girl, I have a story that's too long for this podcast. Can I say neither?
Okay.
Is that
which is the lesser of the two evils?
Oh, probably possibly South Africa. Possibly.
Okay, possibly. Fun.
Oh, for sure, South Africa.
Okay. Beaches.
Okay, when we say U.S., are we talking about mainland?
Yes.
Like the 48 contiguous.
The 48, not Hawaii and Alaska.
Places.
Yes.
Oh, okay, then probably South Africa.
Okay. Transportation.
I think I'd say the U.S.
Cost of living.
South Africa.
Business incentives.
Probably America, yeah.
Safety.
Well, are we speaking pre next year's administration? No, in general, safety. This specifically, safety as an expat living in another country.
Yes.
I could easily say South Africa.
Okay. And lastly, employment. And for you, because you're a business owner, this could mean looking for talent, but then also you looking to work for somebody.
Well, I'll definitely take it from the standpoint of looking for talent. I would say South Africa, but really the entire continent.
Okay. So it's up to you as to where you want to start. Actually, no, it's not. It's up to me. So the very first one out the gate is food, darling. Oh my gosh. Why did you say you prefer food here in America than South Africa? What's going on there?
Okay. So for your listeners and viewers who may be watching us right now, the reason for that is a lot of people know me as like Kori, who like lived in New York because I lived there for 15 years, but I am originally from the South, as I like to say, like the home of great food. And so when I was in New York, people would always ask me, what do I miss most about like not being back in Houston? And I would always say the first thing is the food. And I just think specifically in this geographic like area of the country, where I grew up and where I now reside, like the fact that we can get the great Tex-Mex, Italian, like Creole, Cajun food, and of course, I feel like you can't mention the great state of Texas without mentioning barbecue. And not in a what I consider a New York like mediocre. We're trying to water down all these different like ethnic foods and flavors. Like down south, like they're gonna give it to you real. And so that is actually why I prefer food in America, because I actually think that I get a greater diversity of food and completely different types of cuisines than I actually experience when I'm in South Africa.
Interesting. So, what are they eating in South Africa? And specifically, you were living in both Cape Town and Joburg, yeah?
Yes, between the two. So one of my favorite dishes would have to be the oh my god, I forgot the it's called a pudding, but it's not like actual pudding. It's a dessert thing, but it's more like a sponge cake type of thing. Um, which I'd have to Google it because now I forgot the full name of it. But it's very, very good. Um, and so it's a true like South African dessert dish. It's kind of like a sticky toffee cake pudding is the best way to describe it. And they eat this thing that I also like there called pap and PAP. And it's basically like a grain. It will kind of remind you of like a cross between like rice and grits. And so you kind of eat it in the way that, and sometimes people eat it with their hands. But you kind of put it like over sauce, or like you'll have like a meat or something, some type of protein with it. So that is a dish that like a real like South African dish that I like. But to be honest, I ate a lot of Western inspired and infused foods while I was there, because I feel like, especially perhaps because Cape Town and Joburg are such, big cities, big international cities and destinations. They just serve like a lot of Western style foods. However, I never ate Mexican food while in South Africa because I didn't go all the way from Texas to South Africa, furthest away from Mexico, to figure out what their version of tacos are. That I did not.
So sometimes when I think about, or when I travel internationally, like let's say to Italy or Korea or even Mexico or any of the Caribbean islands, a lot of the food is a lot fresher than I'm used to in America. And so what you talked about more so was maybe cuisines that you liked, but in terms of the freshness of the food, is that a thing in South Africa?
So it absolutely is. And I feel like it's even just more so abroad. But for South Africa, though I did get really, really sick like last year when I was in South Africa. But that's a whole other issue that we may or may not get into with the load shedding and the electricity issue across the country.
Yes.
But no, the food is significantly fresher. You know how here, Jen, like in the US, this like concept of farm to table is like all the rage, so
Mhm.
to speak. But like it's sad that like we had to make that like an in vogue thing to be like, oh, fresh food, and you can start a fresh food concept of a restaurant. And we're like, we're not injecting your food with 10 million things that you don't even know about, and we're loading up all the sodium and sugar, and then we can't figure out why everyone's got diabetes and high blood pressure. Whereas like in South Africa, like it is, I mean, even going to maybe a fast food place like a McDonald's or something, like it's just a completely different experience, and you can taste it like in the food. You're just like, huh, you feel it tastes different, and then you get down to it, you're like, oh, it tastes like less chemically induced. Like that's amazing. And even the stuff that they like on a regular coffee shop, and I'm just gonna compare a big name like a Starbucks or something, like the food, pastries, and things that Starbucks might sell here in the US. It's very, very different than what you're going to experience in South Africa. Like the array of like fresh food offering, that you can just grab and go, um, is much wider. Like it's like that's out in the forefront, not like your processed sandwich.
I remember on my honeymoon, we went to Milan and it was a train station and it was a Starbucks. And when I tell you, that pastry, the little pastry window they had, the food, it looked delicious, it looked fresh. I got like a croissant with some apricot jam in it. That's the first time I even fell in love with apricot jam, and I'm like, why don't we get this in America, right? So to your point, freshness is the standard,
Yeah.
whereas as you said, here it's more in vogue, which is very,
Right.
very
Like, oh,
sad.
you're trying to be so trendy. Like, oh, you want to be so healthy. Yeah, let's do farm to table for brunch. Where it's like, actually, no, like this is more normal. And too, at like even at high end restaurants across the country here, how they'll promote the fact that they have seasonal menus. They're like, oh, it's changing based on, the availability. Whereas like in South Africa, like we don't need to announce what it's already known. Like y'all know strawberries don't grow 12 months out of the year. Like why do we need to announce that there are no strawberries on the menu? Y'all know coming in here that there's not going to be a strawberry infused parfait. Like because it they're only growing in warmer climates, which is on the other side of the world. It would take too much to transport them by the time they get over here, blah blah whatever. So I'm like, yeah, it's a different way of living. And that's also why you see people that live a lot longer, right, that are a lot healthier. And as someone like myself, like I have a gluten allergy, like the things that I can't eat. And I remember my doctor saying a lot of your kind of gastrointestinal issues, Kori, are environmental. And she was like, basically, I mean
Mm.
that because of like where you live. And she didn't really mean in New York. She's like, just like, it's like if you pick up and move somewhere else, like you're gonna see a major difference in your overall health, like your skin clearing up, like all of this stuff. And she was right.
Yeah, that's incredible. And a lot of issues are environmental. Okay, let's figure out why you even left the great old United States of America anyway, and specifically Texas. Why did you move to South Africa?
Well, first of all, I'm like an international baby in my mind. Like I love the world. I love to, and not just be a tourist sort of person, which is great because I do have the flexibility to kind of get up and move. But even before I had the flexibility that I do now, my very first job out of undergrad was in London as an
Mm.
investment banker for a Swiss bank. And that to me is really what kind of set me on this course. Like my family growing up, like, yeah, we traveled, we took some international trips, but I was just like, you know what? I want to not just visit, like I truly want to be intrinsically like involved like in these areas that I'm living. So my first foray was in London and I lived there for a little over a year. And this is back in 2007, so a very, very long time ago at this point. My God, it's almost
Mhm.
like 20 years ago.
I know, it's crazy.
Woo! That's so
Crazy.
long.
I was just a year behind you, ahead of you, whatever, 2006. So I know, so long ago.
Like, I can't believe it's been that long. And I'm talking about college. That's not even high
I know.
school.
Yeah, it's college.
Oh
I
my
know.
God. What
It's
is going
incredible.
on?
But
Okay, sorry.
look at us. Look how cute we are.
I know
Come
we're so
on.
cute, but that realization just hit me when I said that, when
Yeah.
I thought about the year. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
she's not that old. She is. She is. Yeah, so there was London first. And then which I love because I got to easily access the rest of the world. Then my next like living abroad situation actually came in 21. I was living in Thailand for
Mm.
3 months, and that was super duper awesome. So apparently I just like hop around to different continents as well. And then earlier this year it was South Africa, which I, crazy enough, because I've traveled so many places all around the world. Before I started kind of going back to Africa last year, I had only, first of all, been to Northern Africa, which is, like I say, it's the part that's more, intertwined with like the Arabs and all of that. So you get like, I'm talking Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, like those sort of places. And I'd never been to West Africa. So basically, I'd never been to an African country where people predominantly look like me.
Mm.
And I'd already been to Africa twice before I started really traveling back last year. And I'd always wanted to go to South Africa just in general. I just wanted to go visit. You hear how beautiful it is, and all of those things are very true. But I really, I wanted to be able to see all of like the Mandela stuff. I wanted to understand more about this particular country that went through apartheid, in my generation, in my lifetime. I remember running around my house at 5, 6 years old, being like, Mandela is free. Like I wanted to understand it from an adult perspective, like what that was like and what that country is, how they're operating, which that's a whole other fascinating conversation. But so I always just had a feeling on my vision board, which actually when I sold my condo in Brooklyn, I forgot it on the back of the door. So I'm actually really upset about that. After packing up that whole place, I forgot my vision board. But on this vision board, probably for about 8 years, literally was a picture of a globe with like a star on Cape Town for South Africa. So this has been something on my mind. And I had never been. I had never been before last year for the first time. And I was like, one day I'm going to make it. Like one day I'm going to go to South Africa. Like it's going to happen for me. And when I went there last year, besides when I got really sick, I loved it. It was literally everything which most places don't really measure up to that in my mind at this point. I kind of get there and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is cool, but like whatever. But South Africa was not. It was all of those things. It was actually more beautiful than the way people describe it. There's if you go down to the Cape, like seeing what essentially is almost like the end of the globe, like the end of the universe. Like it literally looks like you're standing in an outline. Everyone knows like the bottom part of like the continent of Africa looks like. There is a point in South Africa called Cape Point that you can go to where it literally looks like you're standing in that part of the world
Oh my
on a
gosh.
map. So it's quite fascinating to see. But South Africa, it was all of those things, and I just always felt like very connected to South Africa, to the continent in general. And to be able to have this experience was amazing. I thought I was going to stay longer, but due to, as I mentioned, the electricity issues called load shedding across the
So
continent.
yeah, talk to me about that, Kori. How long were you there? And then yeah, go into what happened.
So I was there for a month, but the plan was to be there for 6 to 9 months. But the load shedding, which I was already aware of from being in South Africa before, but I thought okay, I'm going to manage through. I'm going to, stay at good places. It's going to be fine. They got the backup generators, blah, blah, blah. Like, girl, it was not. It was like right now we're doing this conversation. It's over Wi-Fi. It's me meeting with people over Wi-Fi at like while I'm in a hotel and all of the power going off in the hotel.
Wow.
I got on the elevator one time in a hotel. The power went off while I was on the elevator. Like I was like, this is not how I can live. Like I cannot live this way day in and day out. Even when I
Wait,
first,
wait, hold on one second, Kori, because that is an image we need to have painted. So you're in the elevator.
yeah,
The
just trying to
ele-
go down to the lobby
the
for happy
elect
hour.
the electricity shuts off. What happens? You're in darkness, right?
Yep,
Does the elevator stop?
yep.
And what happened?
I'm in like pure like panic mode, but also because it's load shedding, like it happens every single day. At some point, they're called so the load shedding is the term they use, but essentially what it is rolling blackouts. And there's a major issue, which is even deeper into the political landscape of South Africa and how the country got here. But yes, it is a mess. So when I'm in the elevator, the power goes out. Of course, the immediate thing is like panic in my mind. And then it
Mhm.
was, okay, exhale, the power goes out. You know this, but I also know the power comes back on. So the power came back on within like 3 to 5 minutes. So by the power part, it's the backup generator. So right, everyone, it's not like the actual power from like from the electrical grid. It's the backup generator. So this is why staying at a very good place that has a strong backup generator is super important. Like even if you're getting apartments or anything like that, like you need a place that has a backup generator for sure. It doesn't matter where you're living in South Africa, unless you're living in the capital, which is Pretoria, because that's where they do all their government stuff. So apparently Pretoria does not have any load shedding. I've never been to Pretoria, but this is what I've been told. They have no load shedding and they have no blackouts. Also, the mall in Sandton, which is an area in Joburg, this mall does not apparently ever lose power either because it brings in too much money. And you
Wow.
can't keep these high-end international luxury stores like Louis Vuitton, like Gucci, like Fendi happy if they have to be worried about whether or not their cash registers are going to work, where they're trying to get all this money from people. And they don't know what days they're going to be open for business. So they make sure the government and the power company that this particular mall, and there's a hotel attached to this mall, it's a huge mall, keeps power 24/7. It's a whole political like BS situation going on with load shedding, because also this is a problem that South Africa has only had for I think the past 5 to 7 years. This was not
Mhm.
something that they've always had an issue with. It's a whole conspiracy thing. It's even
So so there's no warning at all. There's
so
no
apparently
time.
the
Okay.
warning is this has been going on long enough that somebody has created an app that tracks when your neighborhood or your area might be having the blackout, the load shedding is going to happen. And like I said, the load shedding, it doesn't happen like for 20 or 30 minutes, and it's never necessarily the same amount of time, and it's not at the same time of day or night where maybe like, oh, I can try to plan my schedule. No, like today, if it happens to be Tuesday, it could be from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Tuesday might come along and you might actually not even experience load shedding at all. Wednesday could come along and you might have it from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Wow.
And when this happens, I mean, it's everything in the area. It's like an apocalyptic like movie scene.
Mm.
Stoplights are out, like everything is out. Like you can
Wow.
literally look outside your window and entire areas will be completely dark. Like you can almost see if you're in a high enough building, like on a high enough floor, like what areas do and don't have power.
So coming from a country where we don't have that
I like to say yet, because I think
yet.
we'll have some of
Yet.
those issues.
Oh my gosh. So coming from a country where we don't have load shedding, Corey, how did you feel the first time that you experienced it?
I thought it was like a joke. I thought this was like a one-off situation. Because to be honest, I didn't really thoroughly know about this before I went to South Africa. Like I kind of heard some rumblings, but I thought this was because I grew up in the South and we have like extreme weather events. I mean, in the South we have hurricanes. In places that snow they get blizzards. Things that can knock out power. So that's pretty much like my experience with being without power. It's like some type of extreme weather event will knock out power, might be for a few hours, could be for a few days, depending on the situation. But to have something that happens every day randomly. Oh, another time the entire country had power. So South Africa's rugby team actually won the World Cup. I think that was earlier this year or end of last year. And for 3 weeks straight, they didn't cut out power in the entire country so that people could tune in to watch. This is what I'm saying. Like it's very questionable. Everybody um
So
there's
they
a show
have
where
the ability to keep the lights on, but they only do it for, it
I
sounds
think
to me,
it's a massive drain. I don't know. I'm not an electrical engineer,
right.
but I will say if anyone is listening, it's super interesting. You should read up on South Africa's state capture, which goes into great detail about the political situation and how the country has ended up in this. And actually, the family behind it, which is an Indian family that is currently evading arrest by living in Dubai. They are currently there. The government knows, like it's a whole mess. Everybody, it is a whole mess.
Ooh, I could talk to you about this all day. Okay, I'm going to switch gears. I have seen this show. I don't know if you know about it. It's on HBO Max called Coming from America. And
Uh-huh.
it's a play on Coming to America, like the movie Coming to America.
Is it funny like Eddie Murphy or
It's a docu-series. They
okay?
document black families moving to African countries
Hmm,
for a certain period of time.
okay.
And so for a lot of the families, particularly one of them, they wanted to live in, where were they? Ghana, Accra
Okay.
specifically. And actually two of the families kind of felt this way. They felt like they wanted to connect with what they believed to be were their ancestral roots. Now you talk, Corey, more about this was, a star on your map, a place for you to
Right.
go because you're just an international baby. You've always
Right.
been hopping from continent to continent. Was there ever a desire to also move there because you felt like there was some sort of ancestral connection?
Like a part of it, yes, but I will say that is more, it wasn't South Africa specific. Like I wanted to be more connected to the continent. Personally, professionally, right? I wanted to be able to tap into the vast talent on the continent for my own business, but I wanted to know what it was like to ride down the street and all the billboards are of nothing but black people.
Mhm.
Like what is that like?
Mm.
It's
Mhm.
mind
Mhm.
boggling in the way where it's
Mhm.
like here we get now obviously a more diverse representation in ads, but like that's taken America a long time to get there. Like what does it look like when Coca-Cola, like the Coca-Cola company, is trying to sell their Minute Maid orange juice, and you're trying to sell it in a country where everyone looks like me? Well, that ad is going to need to be, so it's just like these little bitty things, like the billboards, like everyone's like black. It's kind of like it's the same experience that I get, but on the reverse, like when I go to Asia, right? Like the majority of people in ads across Asia are Asian. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. But when you grow up as a black person in America, like that's not your norm. It's not normal that you're seeing nothing but this representation of you, in, one way or another. So it's very fascinating, which you get a lot more of that definitely in West Africa than you do in South Africa.
Mhm.
So that's why South Africa to me was a place where I wanted to be connected to the continent, but it being a star like on my vision board all those years, I could put it up there with like places where I always wanted to travel since I was young. Like I always wanted to go to Paris one day, and then like I was able
Got
to
it.
do that. You know what I mean? Like to me, South Africa in general was up there. It was in that kind of stratosphere. And this, as I got older and traveled more, I was like, what would it mean to like be around people like me? What would it mean to have meaningful connections? But there's also an awakening too, from that perspective when you do get over there and you are more ingrained, and then they are trying they the local people in Africa are trying to figure out why the hell do you care about trying to be so connected to Africa? Because to them,
Mhm.
you're not African,
Yeah.
you're American.
Yeah.
And like, why do you care to have such a connection to Africa? Is so getting that type of, not backlash, but that response, right? That
Mhm.
was a bit
Mhm.
jarring for me. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, it's why I want to be connected to Africa.
Yeah.
Like, the trans-European slave
Mhm.
trade, because
Mhm.
I stopped calling it the transatlantic. I'm like, the Atlantic Ocean had nothing to do with this.
Mm.
Like, can y'all not
Good.
blame the Atlantic Ocean for this situation? Um,
That's
but
good.
the fact that, right, even in West Africa, like they don't teach much about slavery and the slave trade with the US. So a lot of what they have seen or that they've been taught in school, that slavery, yes, this did happen, but as far as black people in America consider, like they kind of feel like, I don't want to use the word lucky, but like you guys are the black people that are
Mm.
living this, you know, aspirational life to some extent. Right? We're here in Africa, but like we have to learn English. Like that's not our native language. Like we have to, be very well versed in the things that are going on in your country and things of that nature. And to some extent, they're right, because when they're not taught the history of everything that happened and how we ended up here, they have a hard time trying to connect with us in the way that I always felt like I wanted to connect with Africa.
This is good because what's so funny about South Africans asking you and in a way challenging you to think about why would you want a connection here? Why do you feel connected here?
Right.
I think that sort of challenge or that question is never really done here in America. If we want to say, oh my God, I really want, to go back to my African roots and have a connection, nobody ever questions that. And
Right.
honestly, where I am right now is I actually don't have any sort of spiritual or any desire to have a connection with the continent of Africa because I really do think of myself as and it's better in Spanish, okay? Because honestly, we say America, but as we know, the Americas are a lot more than United States. So I
Right.
am, a United Stateser. Okay. I am a person that is very proud of being from this country.
Right.
And so my connection is here. My family has been here for generations. And so I don't identify as, African per se, generally African. I am a United Stateser, you
Well, look,
know,
then your feelings are not going to be hurt when you go over there because they're not going to
they
identify
won't.
you as African either. See, my feelings were hurt
No.
though. Everybody, I was in my bag. I was like, "What? Do you not see the
Yeah.
color of this highly melanated skin? I am you. You are me. We are we together." They were like, "Girl, no.
I
Like
bet they
you are
were.
American, and you just
Yeah.
happen to have some melanin."
Yeah. A lot of stuff happened, right, between the way, but I mean, we are American. We are
We are.
United Statesers. We're United Statesers. Thank you for that amazing, amazing answer. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left. You were only there for a month,
This
right?
time, yes. I still think there could be a time where I go back and like live a lot longer because I do love South Africa. I just got to figure out like I don't know. I might have to do something different. Just because I'm an entrepreneur, like I
Mhm.
live and die by Wi-Fi. Like I don't know what I'd have to figure something out.
As far as the talent is concerned, because you're a business owner,
Yeah.
you are the CEO and head of Culturebanx. Yeah, tell me about the talent in that time.
So the talent is great. Actually, my company, we work with a company in Johannesburg. It's called the African Leadership Academy, and they actually provide us an endless talent pipeline of interns and like more junior people to work with Culture Bank, and which obviously makes sense. We are able to get like top notch, educated people who are looking hungry for an experience to be able to work in the field that they're interested in, to be able to even have this international experience, which is exactly what we're giving them working with an American company. And it's also in partnership with MasterCard. Like it's been going on now I started actually working with them before moving to South Africa, but I literally like our relationship expanded significantly after I was on the ground there, being able to meet with the team in person, really try to explain the needs, the type of talent that we're looking for. I mean, it's just grown by leaps and bounds. And I would have never really had that opportunity to experience like meeting with some of the people and getting a deeper kind of just inside knowledge, like having a kickback at a restaurant, like let's have some wine after work and talk about all the things that like kind of we need or where we're going, and being able to facilitate other introductions to other organizations, to be able to meet other startup founders who are on the continent, other investors, right, who are looking to invest in the diaspora across the board. Like all of those things were so much easier. And actually, saying all that makes me kind of miss South Africa. I don't miss the
No.
power going out all the time, but um, the other parts I do genuinely like miss. And yeah, I just South Africa is really it really is a dope place. I know I'm not like selling you guys great on like the whole political landscape, but there are geopolitical issues in every country around the world, including our own.
Mhm.
And no country is perfect. It just for me is all about where I'm at in whatever stage in my life. Like, do I think that this place makes sense and can offer me a new challenge and opportunity to do some type of like self growth and like evolving situation.
Good. And then lastly, and I'm going to have you choose since we have like 5 minutes. Do you want to talk about the better healthcare in South Africa and honestly I really want this one I'm about to say,
Okay.
men. Which one do you want to go with?
Woo! Okay, we only have 5 minutes.
We only have 5 minutes.
I'm gonna cover both, but really quickly. The
Okay.
healthcare in South Africa is better because
Yeah.
it's more affordable. I told you guys I got sick the first time I went to South Africa. I had the hotel. I actually booked me an appointment with the doctor. It cost me. I was like very deathly ill to the point where I was going to miss my flight
Oh
in
my
two
god.
days. because I wasn't gonna, it was food poisoning. But I wasn't going to be able to make it to the airport because I was flying back to the States. So you guys imagine, and I was flying through Paris from Cape Town to Paris. That's a 12 and a half hour flight just right there before flying. And at that time I was still living in New York before flying from Paris to New York. So it was going to be a very long travel situation where I was not going to be able to make it on an airplane. So anywho's, I got a doctor's appointment. It was $40.
Wait, with insurance, without insurance?
I don't have any insurance in South Africa. No, it was
$40. Oh my God.
I remember the front desk person at the hotel telling me however much it was, like in South African Rand, whatever that conversion was. They were like, is it okay? Because like they're going to need to take a credit card over the phone. I was like, yeah, it's fine.
So they thought it was super expensive, and they were like concerned.
And I was like, yeah, can you send me the address? I'm booking an Uber right now. I got to go. Yeah, it was perfect. So This is why. So that's my healthcare situation, especially coming from the U.S.
Okay, good.
On to the menses. For all of us in the U.S.
Wait, I have to mention something. You had to pull your glasses back. You had to do the little push back of the glasses. Okay, go ahead. I thought that was so cute because you're
the menses of it all, everyone. Like, to me, the dating pool is full of pee here in the U.S. So of course, taking my talents elsewhere, obviously abroad, I thought, oh, your girl's gonna be hot in these streets. Not that I wasn't. I'm still hot in these U.S. streets, but I just think that, which is why my original answer was neither place. The expectations, I think, for men across the world and where they see women's role in a relationship, it becomes very, very interesting. Women in America, we grow up with a lot of rights, though they've been challenged, in this past year or two. But compared to the rights of women around the world, right? American women are very much so looked up to for our freedom of thought, our freedom of speech, the way we like to push the envelope. So you have to remember that even when you're going to these other countries, and South Africa is not a third world country, it is a very developed nation, but there's still a lot of villages, things like that. Like the way that women are treated and what's expected of them and from them is something that, it doesn't always align. And of course you do find more progressive individuals, but I definitely, to some extent, found that to be a challenge with the dating in South Africa. Also, you have to remember, when you're American and you're going to these other countries, and a lot of people around the world very much so admire the U.S. and would love an opportunity to live in the U.S., you have to make sure you're not going to end up on 90 Day Fiance. Or, somebody is trying to be all into you because they're hopeful they're going to get their green card.
Look.
Like, these are very real things. And I mean, it's funny, even when I'm saying, like, in the back of my mind, it's funny, but these are very real things that you have to be aware of. So it also makes like a heightened, which is something that you don't have when you're dating bum people in the US. Like, they're just normal bum dudes.
They're just normal bums.
Right. They're regular bums. So you're not worried about whether or not they're trying to be with you just so they can stay in the country or get into the country. You know what I mean? Like they have their own other set of issues, but that is something you have to be very aware of when you're dating people in South Africa. Like, a lot of these people in South Africa, the unemployment rate is extremely high, something to be aware of. The poverty rate is very high. Even though apartheid has ended, the white majority still control lots of South Africa. They own the majority of the land still in South Africa. Like, all of these things play a part in, the troubles that kind of the men go through. Crime is very high, especially in Johannesburg. So these are just things to be aware of if you're going to be out dating people. I would offer caution.
Okay. This has been such an enlightening conversation, and there's so much we did not cover. But this was good, Kori. Tell the people where they can find you, darling.
Where can you guys find me? Well, one, I want you guys to all subscribe to the Culturebanx newsletter. That's BANX. And you can check your girl out on Instagram. It's Kori.Hale.
Thank you so much, Kori, for being on this episode.
Yes.
Thank you so much to our guests for joining me, and thank you for listening. This episode was edited by Chase Parker, hosted and executive produced by me, Jennifer Brown. produced by Latrice Love and distributed by Black Owned Productions. I hope you'll join me again on another episode. The Curiosity Podcast is a safe space to not only explore my curiosity of all the things, but yours as well. And together, we get to dig a little deeper as to why that curiosity exists in the first place.